Hey everybody, welcome to the panel of The Dark Side of Hardware. My name is Peter Toshinsky, and I'm a CTO of Intent, a hardware and software consultancy that works at the intersection of physical and digital. And I'm joined by two amazing gentlemen here who I will let introduce themselves. Do you guys got mics? All right.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. All right, Stephen, why don't we start?
Sure,
with
yeah.
you?
My name is Stephen Katz, and I'm the CEO of ALEC. We make audio and communication and safety equipment for the outdoor adventure sport market. And our mission is to become the most widely used technology for audio comms and safety in adventure sports and beyond.
Amazing. Paul.
Hey everyone, my name's Paul Slattery. I am a partner and director of engineering at BCG Digital Ventures, and what we try and do is we help companies to capture value in new markets and to build prototypes and then to launch them into fully fledged businesses.
Very cool. There are, I'm sure you noticed, there are 4 people here, 3 people here. So unfortunately, one of our panelists had a rain check, so Fiora is not going to be here. But we have 2 amazing guys who will fill in. So the dark side of hardware. I wanted this panel to be, as an ex-entrepreneur myself, wanted it to be more upbeat and maybe on a positive note, but hopefully by extracting some of the knowledge or experience that our guys have out of the dark side will help you position your ventures for success. And we're gonna start with like a warm-up question. So as we're nearing the Halloween, I would like you guys to start with the most dramatic horror story that met you, hopefully hardware related, in your experience. Who wants to take that one?
I'll go, yeah, happy to take that. Well, not happy to take it, but yeah. But right the way back at the start, when I started the company, I was like, right, we've got to de-risk this. We've got to try and get stuff manufactured in the UK and just work with UK firms, and then take recommendations about who to use as partners from there. Anyway, we got introduced to an agency based out of St. Petersburg, Russia, and they were doing our app and hardware development. And there was some pretty severe language barriers, and quickly it became apparent I needed to make a trip out to St. Petersburg to kind of go and go and see what was going on. And I'd arranged it all with the guys, and I turned up to St. Petersburg, walked up to the office the next morning, and no one was there. And the founder of the business, who was based in Germany, was meant to be flying in, and he stayed in Germany. He didn't turn up. So I had a couple of nights in St. Petersburg, beautiful city, but that was a lot of money wasted.
Gotcha. I've heard St. Petersburg was a nice city. What about you, Paul? Got any horror stories?
I mean, that doesn't sound so bad, actually, I have to say. But no, we a couple of years back, we worked on a connected health solution where we were going to install ambient sensors in the home to kind of look after people. And we did a lot of work to try and make sure that it was really easy to install and for people to be able to put that in place. But I think one of the lessons that I've really learned is that like anything that users can do, they will do with your hardware. We sent out some pretty detailed instructions of how to set up the gateway and set up the motion sensors and door sensors, but we didn't realize that the partner that we were working with had a tiny little reset switch on the back, where you like stick in a toothpick and can reset the whole gateway. So we had a couple of situations where people just reset the entire gateway, and that meant we had to send them out an entirely new gateway. So yeah, just a little lesson from that one.
Hilarious. Fun fact, we've been recently at a meeting at one of our partners, and we got a pre-configured device that we needed to reset. And there was a reset hole, and we spent 30 minutes trying to reset the thing, and it didn't work. And it turned out that there is a special sequence of reset presses that you have to do. Maybe that would work. All right, switching gears a little bit. So the situation right now out there is pretty tense, as you probably all know. There is the war on talent. There is chip shortage. There is unstable geopolitical situation. In light of being a hardware company founder, is there something or a specific problem that you would advise founders to focus on first? Because there's a lot of problems, right? And it might be very, very overwhelming to people to even think about starting companies. Is there anything that you would recommend people to focus on first?
Yeah, maybe I'll take this one. I think the most important thing we learned anyway by doing this a few times was just try and focus on the really core features first. Try not to design everything, too many exotic features up front. Just focus on the core features. We had a lot of noise that we had to clear up in our data, and then I think the other thing that happened was we could get models to work like at 80%. In terms of insight when we're generating from the sensor results, but actually getting things above 80% is where it gets really, really difficult, and that can take an immense amount of time to optimize. So I think just really try and find your problem solution fit and product market fit as early as you can. Keep it simple, and try and get work on that and get that released before you start to put in any more exotic type features into what you're building. That would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, I fully agree with that for sure. It's so easy to be tempted to kind of go after the shiny new object type thing and make your MVP, your first MVP, have every feature that you currently want, but maybe the market doesn't want all of that. I think related to my horror story, I would say if you're talking like from the very, very start, it's like finding the right kinds of people to help you do the stuff you're trying to do. So if it's like developing hardware, I'd be speaking to people who've built successful hardware and try and find out where they got that made, where they started, did they do it in-house, did they use an agency, how good was that agency, and really heavily vet that process. I think that's where I made my first mistakes, was jumping in too easily with the Russians.
Yeah. That's a good one. All right, you guys have vastly different experiences because Paul is working at a venture builder, Boston Consulting Group. Digital Ventures is a venture builder, so you guys have a perspective on many, many different products at the very early stage. So out of that specific experience, is there anything that like a lesson learned or a common theme that you see people fail at or struggle with, especially at that 0 to 1 journey?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I was thinking about it as we came down. We've done, I think, 3 or 4 kind of very hardware-specific ventures so far. One, as I said, related to, actually 2 different instances of a kind of connected health using ambient sensors. And the other one we incubated was Machine Max for Shell. I think maybe a couple of things just that are sort of to be aware of. It's very easy to get something working on a Raspberry Pi, right, and to build something quickly with that, and that's fantastic for us as developers. But it's a big step to take that and then to actually get that working in production. So obviously, like, you can raffinate Raspberry Pis, but then actually getting something that's really production ready, both within the firmware and what's available there, but also within the physical aspects of it as well. It's super important. As I said, we learned our lessons about users, doing all sorts of crazy things with the sensors and not making them work. And then one of the things from that was to really give very, very clear instructions and clear handbooks to show people how to set the product up. And then I think the other huge learning from Machine Max was that you might be able to get something working in a environment, but once it goes out into all of the other environments that can be out there, then lots of different things can happen, such as trying to get LoRaWAN gateways to communicate across really big mines. You have to place them sometimes on the top of huge antennas and masts, and then when you need to do something to flash those gateways, you've got problems to do that as well. So I think there's no substitute for testing and for doing a lot of testing within the environment that you're going to go to. I think they're the kind of lessons that we've learned from some of those ventures.
Gotcha. And switching gears a little bit to Stephen. Stephen, you are running a product company, so you're focused on one specific product and problem, possibly. and you're way past, you know, the product solution fit, product market fit. And every time I talk to you, which is, you know, every month or so, you come up with, you know, a new set of news, right? So is there anything, you know, past that 0 to 1 route that you know, you probably yourself or you see others founders struggle with? Any advice on, you know, like once you get off the ground?
Yeah, I think the again, just keeping that focus, I suppose, and having like a really kind of core mission. I have a good example this year, as you know, Peter. We had an acquisition opportunity come out completely out of the blue. So luckily, we were kind of nimble enough to kind of move quickly and close the acquisition. But it was very much part of what our core strategy was. It wasn't adjacent. It was like very much what we were planning to do already. It just meant we could press the fast forward button. So I think having like a really clear 3 to 5 year plan. What kind of additional product lines have you got coming that you're focusing on? How do you speed up that process and try not to get distracted by the other things that will inevitably come along?
Gotcha. Yeah, totally. This may be very dramatic, but I feel personally that we have reached somewhat of I want to say plateau maybe in hardware, right? I mean, I remember the days when, you know, we were so excited. I personally, as an engineer, I was so excited to get, you know, the newest iPhone in my hands, to try the newest APIs. This year I got, you know, the Dynamic Island, right? So do you feel that we have reached some sort of a plateau in hardware?
Happy to take that. Yeah. I similar to you, I used to get so buzzing for every new GoPro release. You know, back in 14, 15, whenever that would have been. I think when Kickstarter first came about, I guess that would have been around about 2011, 12 or something. There was some super exciting things there, and there was a lot of stuff to get excited about because it was probably the point at which dreams were truly becoming reality, and you kind of had got to the point where actually things were becoming possible. Obviously, there's been a lot of rough stories with Kickstarter and hardware startups and stuff, but I would tend to agree. I think like with the new iPhones coming out, I think they're obviously awesome pieces of hardware, but it's not like the crazy camera upgrades that you used to have.
LiDAR.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I don't know. It's like the satellite stuff's pretty cool, I think. But it seems to be like much more incremental stuff. So yeah, I tend to agree. It feels like it's plateauing, and there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. So it's kind of hard to have something truly stand out.
Mm-hmm. Paul, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that in terms of hardware. I think a lot of the improvements now are going into the direction of machine learning and inside of the software. So, you know, the stuff that the MetaQuest is going to release about full body tracking is going to be like really interesting. And so I think that people are driving the hardware a little bit more, given the software improvements. But yeah, anything that can make it smaller and more ambient and working harder in the background, then I think that's something I'm really interested in.
And the legs, right?
Yeah,
the legs are funny thing. Amazing. So, with that plateau, do you guys see any place or application where hardware is still lacking or is absent? Any opportunities there? Maybe we have some future founders here who are thinking about doing something, but they don't really know what. Are there any exciting places that you think are likely to take off in the near future?
Yeah, I would say the in like enterprise and the industrial markets, I think are probably the most exciting places to be today. Mm-hmm. For a number of reasons. I think obviously the obvious one that everyone sees is consumer. It's sexy, it's like customer facing, and it's like you get to create a brand, and you know, you get to do loads of cool marketing and stuff like that. But after doing hardware for a certain amount of time, you definitely get a bit fatigued with how much it drains you. And the thought of like doing stuff in the industrial market where actually you know, a lot of them are tech forward, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity to integrate new tech into different industrial markets, mm-hmm. Where they've got way bigger budgets. So that's sexy in its own right, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, enterprise.
Yeah, we've seen just a huge growth in basically industrial goods and in that entire sector, energy as well. just again, things that are probably quite basic, but are really enabling all of these industries. So I think one of the things that we consistently come back to are, really good prototypical platforms. I don't know if Develco are in the house, or we use their systems quite a lot. Zigbee sensors and gateways. And so it just gives an amazing amount of flexibility for us as builders to be able to go in and to do, again, quite basic things. The whole concept of Shell Machine Max is really just about trying to find out whether the machine was idling or not, whether it's on or off, and being able to just turn off the machines that are on. So it's quite unsexy, as you were saying, but it's extremely powerful once it's applied at scale.
Mm-hmm. And what are in hardware primarily? There are some very glaring constraints, right? Like batteries, right? I don't feel we've come along. Well, we've come a long way with batteries, but just recently with the hardware development and all the actors that are actively limiting us in terms of batteries, like thank you airlines, right? For the milliamp limits on power banks. Are there any obstacles that you feel that once are taken away, the hardware will dramatically excel, like other than batteries? Because I think the batteries are the biggest one, right? Like at least for me.
Well, from our perspective, batteries is a super interesting one because the latest Bluetooth 5.2 is bringing in LC3, the new LC3 codec, which basically means you can stream super high quality, high fidelity audio over essentially the BLE channel. So it doesn't mean that you have to switch back and forth between A2DP, which churns through much more battery. So from an audio and communication perspective in the market where we sit, we're super excited for that to come to market because it's like, actually, that's going to mean that we can dramatically reduce the size of the batteries to power what we're doing, which means that our products become smaller and sexier and more kind of minimal, which I think is what the consumer's wanting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that just combined with like the rollout of 5G, which will make things really interesting as well. I think that's, they're interesting considerations.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to do one more question, and then we'll open it up to you guys. I'm sure you have some questions to our amazing panelists. So if there was maybe one advice that you were to give a person who is, just sitting here with a little Raspberry Pi and they have a prototype of something, like what would be your main advice for a still excited founder who is maybe viewing the world through the pink lenses?
Don't get sucked into to marketing too early. Focus on the product and absolutely nailing that and making sure that you're not going to release a product that just gets absolutely hammered week one after launch. I think really focusing on that MVP. To your point, not getting distracted by all of the future iterations, and just moving as quickly as physically possible to get that to market.
I like the physically.
Yeah, I would also just second that and say just, test everywhere, get it working really well, and try and make it smaller and more battery efficient, but just really focus on the product. I think I would totally agree with that.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
Okay, now, since the pandemic, we've all been working from home and what have you. Do you see a change from people now focusing on software as opposed to actually focusing on hardware because they're now working from home?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a change. I would say that it's just more difficult to move quickly in the hardware development phases. So prior to the pandemic, I would go to China probably 2 or 3 times a year to visit our factories. And the amount you get done face to face is just so much more exponentially quicker than doing it over Zoom. I wouldn't say that's pushed us more towards software necessarily. It just means that we're kind of slightly more constrained on lead times and development times for hardware.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, we've struggled with that, and we've actually created a dedicated space within our offices just for hardware experimentation called the Garage, and we just regularly like stock it up with the latest sensors and equipment that we can get our hands on. And people actually really who would prefer to kind of work remotely, making a lot of effort to kind of come in and be a part of this because they want to actually have that feeling of building together physically in a space. So yeah.
Cool, thank you. More questions, they're free. Come on. Gonna get you mic'd up.
Hi there. I've got a question about sort of future-proofing hardware products when you go out. Obviously, when you build hardware, the minute you release it, it's released in the form that it's in, and you've got to think about the future. How do you kind of approach that? How do you deal with that when you're building your company and your first products?
That's a great question. We absolutely effed up by not having OTA updates in the first version of the product that we released to market. I would say focusing on over-the-air updates as an absolute priority in your version 1 for Bluetooth-enabled devices is so important, and that helps you stay. If you release a product and then there will inevitably be small bugs, you can fix it retrospectively rather than having to release an entirely new product. As a kind of second part to that, I've kind of got PTSD from that as well because our first product's Bluetooth chipset from Qualcomm got discontinued. So we had to go through a complete new round of NRE and basically set us back. We're only just about to bring that product to market next year, but that really set us back and set us back probably $100,000 as well in the process.
Yeah, just would echo. We also struggled with OTA on Machine Max as well, and it forced us to have a lot of those issues as well. So I would really focus on that. Also on just again making everything dust proof and kick proof and every other kind of a proof thing that you need for the industrial environment. It's really important. But obviously the components probably want to stay the same, but making sure that you've got a really robust housing and evolving the housing almost immediately from the word go, because you'll find new things as you go out into the environment that you didn't like, new sorts of pressures and problems that you might need new housing for.
I'll just probably plus one on that because working with a lot of partners that Intent works with, the number one feature that we usually start work with is OTA. We've worked with companies from consumer electronics to even car dampers, and the number one thing that our engineering teams typically start with is OTAs.
Thanks.
Hi. You've said a lot about making sure the product is absolutely perfect before it goes to market, but I've seen a lot of products that look fantastic and work really well, but the business dies. So I just wondered if you had any ideas or what your top tips would be for making sure there is a market, and how you can make sure that first step is as successful as possible.
Yeah, happy to take that. Yeah, another great question as well. Yeah, I think it's so tempting as a founder, I guess, to think that you've come up with the best idea in the world and everyone's going to love your product and stuff, but then you put it out to the market and then people don't like it. So yeah, trying to get product market fit, but yeah, how do you do that? It's basically tons of research, absolutely tons and tons and tons of research. Unless you're, I suppose, bringing a product to market that is kind of established as having product market fit already. We make Bluetooth headphones. There's a pretty big market for Bluetooth headphones. But yeah, I think if it's something that's more niche, absolutely nailing the product market fit is huge.
Yeah, I just would add to that. I mean, where we are in DV, we have an entire process essentially to help us define problem solution fit followed by product market fit, and that applies very well to digital products, right? Let's say to apps or to a marketplace. And what we've done is we've brought that whole kind of set of tools over to hardware. And so we start out with research, as you say, but then follow with paper prototyping. We observe people working with, cardboard, essentially. In the beginning, we do user interviews, all before we're actually building anything. in terms of an actual product that we're going to release. Obviously, then there's a whole lot of spiking going on the engineering stream as well, right? Where we're working with basic tools, as I said, either it's Raspberry Pi or something like the Develco SquidLink platform, and so we do a lot of that, and then we kind of converge on those two together. But it's super important. I couldn't agree more that there's a whole lot that has to happen from problem solution to product market fit to ensure that you're going to be able to make a successful business out of what you're building.
Can I just chuck something else on top of that as well? Yeah, I think also making sure that trying to balance that with the MVP and making sure that you're not having too many things kind of come in, because everyone's got an opinion as part of a process of what should be in V1. Everyone will have an opinion, and it's cutting through that, balancing it with what research you've got and what consumers are saying, and then categorizing what those top 10 features are, putting them in a hierarchy, and then going for the first 3 for MVP. That's a very rough.
100%. Would absolutely agree with that. I mean, if you try and do all 10 in that situation, you're probably going to fail.
And you can also do a lot of work without actually having an MVP out there, right? This is a principle based on which a lot of the venture builders are operating under. They create burner brands, so like a fake brands or fake landing pages that articulate what the product is about, how it works. Sometimes they have a purchase button, and that purchase button acts like a validation, right? And they drive a lot of traffic onto that website. And if they see whatever percentage of conversion happening, then it's a good signal to start exploring the concept further and maybe even start building, right? So yeah, definitely. I think. I used to, I advise startups every now and then, and typically my number one advice, the one that I give most often, is like wait with building till the last moment. So do a lot of validation, do a lot of talking to your customers, but the longer you wait with writing your first line of code or doing a first hardware prototype, the better for you, probably.
Thanks.
Cool. More questions? We got 2 here.
Thank you. So my question goes around, or on the OTA updates. So there's been a lot of mentioning of OTA updates. Number one thing, very important and so on. Have you come across the issue of balancing that against security? Because the OTA update, of course, can potentially open up a security loophole. And how do you manage that balance?
That's a good question. I think where we operate is in the consumer markets. I think OTA updates are a kind of very well defined thing. Consumers are used to doing it. Obviously, making sure you've got the right security in place from day one is important. Working with a good partner who has experience developing OTA is critical. Or making sure your team have the expertise to do it themselves if it's in-house. I'm not sure if that answers your question, though.
Have you found that you've had to cut down on OTA in order to improve security, or the other way around?
My brutal view on that is to make sure you've got OTA for your customers ahead of thinking about security, frankly. I don't think there's any major security flaws in the 2 minutes or the potential to kind of open up security flaws is so minimal in that environment. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm more concerned about making sure that consumers have the best possible product, because that's going to be the thing that they're going to care about most first.
I would probably add to that, don't reinvent the wheel. Typically the vendors are offering some sort of an OTA library or mechanism. I know engineers are always very enthusiastic about building stuff on their own from ground up, but typically the odds are you're going to end up with something less functional and less secure than Nordic offers, for instance, right? And if you are, then I would probably make sure that all of the pieces of the puzzle, because it's not only the device, it's the app that executes The OTA is the back end that serves you the right image, and there is a way to validate whether or not the image that you're getting from the back end is the actual image that you need or you're requesting. So making sure that all the pieces of the puzzles are taken care of. That would be probably my 2 cents to that. One more? All right. Oh, there's hold on.
Hi.
coming up. Yeah, hey.
So you briefly mentioned the limitation of batteries. Do you think there is a potential of battery-less and energy harvesting designs and applications?
Yeah, I think it's probably that maybe in the future. I don't see anything from any suppliers. I don't know what you've seen, Peter. I don't see anything from any suppliers that would mean that today we could start integrating that into our product roadmap. I think if you're talking about something that's like solar, or if it's kinetic or something like that, I don't think solar's got enough surface area to power a Bluetooth audio device, because it's like a calculator. It's very different from like an e-ink display. And yeah, so no, I don't see anything. I'm not aware of any technologies that are that far advanced that we could legitimately integrate into our product development.
I mean, there's a trade-off, right, between the connectivity and bandwidth, and then battery usage. So I think it will be some time, as you say, before we're able to get to something with either solar panels that are more effective that can then drive something locally. But I'm not aware of anything, as I say, today that can do that. But a great question.
Yeah, totally. I think there are some use cases where energy harvesting is an actual opportunity. So we recently talked about, as a matter of fact, Przemek was sitting over here. We talked about a smart Band-Aid that gets energy from the heat of the body. There are some NFC tags that are woken up by your phone. They do a little bit of logic. They sometimes maybe even update the e-ink display that stays frozen. But I don't necessarily see a lot of opportunity in like push-to-talk headsets or for energy retrieval.
Yeah, I think I just remembering actually. I think it was last week Adidas launching some over-ear headphones, and in the headband they've got solar panels, but it's still recharging a battery. It's not like it's under its own steam.
There are some, Garmin smartwatches that have solar panel around the face of the watch, but for all I know, they don't charge, but they just get discharged on a slower rate than it would have been without them. But a very good question. More questions? One more. And here. Who's got the mic?
Hi. What have you found to be the most effective way to test your products before they hit the market? So that could be either user testing or fidelity.
Yeah, I think finding your absolute core demographic. So for us, we make Bluetooth headphones for skiing, biking, motorcycling, and we already had an established market in the snow market. We're doing something slightly different in bike, but working with like core riding groups, people who go bike rides literally every day, if not every week. I think just really it comes back to that kind of research point, like focusing on your core demographic and the people you want to be selling that product to, and really listening to like what are they saying, like what is going to solve a problem that they have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The thing that we did for connected care at home, we did a lot of research to find older folks at home. We were looking for a solution like that, and then did a lot of user interviews with them, and really tried to understand the people caring for them and what they expected to be cared for, and just doing a lot of research. And I think if you can add to your team someone who is like really focused on user research and able to kind of find the signal within these demographics, then that will be really great to help you to kind of cut through the noise to find the signal that you need to help you to build your initial products.
I've found that we've structured our company so that customer support is really closely tied into product development. so that we know exactly what the customer's saying all the time, and you've got that constant feedback loop.
And I think it's really easy to get fixated on the happy path, right? So the way you imagine your product being used by users, but like one of you guys said before, it's almost never the case, right? So investing a lot in doing a Q&A, QA before your product launches, and even going as far as doing pen tests. I've seen some startups get really ripped apart by pen testing agencies. Got one more? Yeah, over here. Hold on.
I'm going to steal it for a sec, if that's all right. One of you mentioned there about you had to do some extra R&D, very painful R&D on replacing a Qualcomm Bluetooth chipset. And I guess that was obviously a very painful learning, so you had to make changes, not just the chip. How have you approached that differently now going forward? Do you have any extra processes in place to say, oh, how do we do this? And I know this is a common theme in some of the talks. There's one later on. Is modular design better? Is that maybe the way you should do it? But then you have costs associated. So, yeah, what changed?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we were. It's quite nuanced. So the chip we were using was entry level. So it was hitting a price point that worked for us through distribution and retail, and making sure everyone had their margin requirements through retail. And it just so happened there wasn't a pin compatible chip to replace it with. So it meant that we had to completely redo all of our schematics and redesign the product. The way we've kind of combated that was this time round, we saw how many different products in the market were using that chipset that we were moving to, and we spoke directly to Qualcomm as well. And whilst they can't commit to never discontinuing a chip, we were getting good feedback that it wasn't going to happen in the immediate future. I think it was just unluck. Basically, bad luck. Everything that will go wrong, that does go wrong, will go wrong, or whatever the saying is. But yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those.
Cool. Your turn finally. Do you want to get mic'd up? I'll take it.
Just as a follow-up question, just try to understand, what is your number one concern regarding growth and R&D? I mean, mine is supply chain, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's hitting timelines, I guess. Yeah, which is, you set out to make a really robust 3 to 5 year plan, and you want to stick to it, and then you have a pandemic that. With one of our components, it basically shot up from 14-week lead time to a 58-week lead time, which was just insane. So trying to hit the time. I mean, we're seeing that start to kind of stabilize now, and we're down to only half a year now as opposed to over a full year. But yeah, I think just trying to be as rigid as possible with sticking to your development schedule and getting the products to market. If you do have a portfolio of products, like we do, trying to get them to market when you plan to get them to market. I think that's the biggest thing that would hinder our growth, is not meeting those deadlines.
Yeah, I think we're in a slightly different position, kind of a bit earlier stage. And I think the big one from our side is to pick a very good vendor that you know very well, that you're comfortable with their development kit, with the way in which they can offer, what kinds of sensors and protocols they can offer, and kind of deepen that relationship with them. As I said, Develco have been an amazing partner for us and have helped us to launch quite a few ventures in this space, because we know them very well. We've got a good relationship with them, and we really understand their product set, and we know how to kind of push it in the ways that we need to get what we need to get out of it. So I think that's what we want to do initially at the early stages, certainly.
Gotcha. Well, we got space for one more, maybe one really quick one.
Hey guys, great talk, thank you. With everything you were saying with what's going on right now, it kind of feels like the cards are stacked against startup companies. And you were saying about picking one MVP and sticking with things the whole way through. So do you kind of feel that when you do release, obviously we all know how much you learn from sort of revision changes and field trials. Do you feel like it's a one-shot deal for hardware because of the pricing, and it's not like software where we can just change things on the fly?
Great question.
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, and it kind of is. It does feel like having gone through the process. It's like and having gone through the process and then seeing like a chip get discontinued. It is like, shit. That is that is a true one go at it. So yeah, I mean, OTA is kind of like a plaster you can put over stuff for a certain period of time. But if something comes left of field like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably not what you wanted to hear, but yes, it is. It is pretty much binary. It's either done or it's not done.
I think it just puts a lot of the pressure again on the research, on the MVP, on the product market fit, getting that right. Because as you say, there probably is just one or two iterations max that you get to have a go at it in terms of hardware specifically. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for our panel.